And welcome to Wendell's World in Sports, the YouTube version of my podcast, Wendell's World in Sports. My name is Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Bonjour, monsieur, mademoiselle. Comment allez-vous? Très bien, merci. Vous-même, je m'appelle Wendell Wallace. Que pasa, mi amigos? Mi amo Wendell Wallace. Wendell's World in Sports for my senoritas and senors. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace, the YouTube version of what's going down in the world of sports. Konnichiwa and shalom to all out there at Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. Today on the podcast, on this video podcast, talking about the NBA Finals, talking about LeBron James, talking about his legacy, talking about Kobe Bryant and the legacy of the Lakers winning the championship, talking about all those things. Going to stay away from football, talked about football on my podcast, Wendell's World of Sports, which you can find on any place where you listen to podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, iHeart, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you will find me, Wendell's World of Sports. Just go ahead and get that done. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can also follow me on Facebook. You can follow me almost everywhere as I try to grow what I'm doing. But right now, going to be talking about what's happening in the NBA. The most, I guess you could say what you could probably say, the most unique and unlikely season in NBA history is finally over. 356 days after the season began, your Los Angeles Lakers won their franchise record 17th NBA championship. I guess it ties with the Boston Celtics as the most championships by a franchise. And yes, we are counting the Minneapolis Lakers. Thank you very much. Who, by the way, lost to the Boston Celtics back in the 50s. That was Elgin Baylor's first year. So, yes, we are going to be counting the Minneapolis Lakers, because if you can count one of the championships for the Boston Celtics because they beat the Minneapolis Lakers, then yes, you have to include the Minneapolis franchise. Well, not really the Minneapolis franchise. They were both Minneapolis and moved over to LA. So the Lakers dominated the Heat, Miami Heat, to win Game 6, 106-93. Win the series 4-2. Frank Vogel made the move before Game 6 to start Alex Caruso instead of Dwight Howard. The Lakers led by 8, 28-20 after the first quarter. And then after that, the Lakers said, you know what, screw this, man. We're done fooling around. They led by as many as 30. They outscored Miami 36-16 in the second quarter. LA's 28-point halftime lead was the second largest in NBA history, just below the 30-point drubbing that the Boston Celtics had on the Lakers in Game 1 of the Memorial Day Massacre back in 1985. I remember Scott Wedman still not being able to miss shots. But LeBron James messed around, got himself a triple-double, 28 points, 14 rebounds, 10 assists, to win his fourth Finals MVP award in his fourth ring. So now, here we go. Anthony Davis, by the way, added 19 points, 15 boards. I was on record. I'll go ahead and say it. I was on record by saying that if the Lakers were going to win this championship, that Anthony Davis was going to have to be the MVP. Oops, it's my bad. Now, Anthony Davis was strong. And one of the reasons why I said that was because I thought the showdown in terms of who was going to win the series was going to come down between Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler played tremendous, but I thought him and LeBron James sort of kind of neutralized themselves out. And I thought that the Miami Heat were going to win this series. Not only was Jimmy Butler going to have to be consistently good, I thought that Bam Adebayo would have to take it to another level than what he did against the Boston Celtics. Now, when you have a myriad of injuries that Adebayo had to where he was missing a couple of games, all that, my point proved mute in that area. But LeBron James, and I'll be the first one to say, man, I thought, and I still think, it's only a natural. The guy's 35 years old. He played in the league 17 years. He's logged over 50,000 minutes. So, yes, the physical attributes of LeBron James, of what he was when he was 31 and 28 and 24, are no longer there. He can't dominate for long stretches like he could back in those days. And I mentioned before, a couple of years ago, what he did with the Cleveland Cavaliers when he first came back from Miami. And he took that team to the NBA championship where they lost to the Golden State Warriors. The situation where in Game 7 a couple of years ago, his last Eastern Conference Finals with the Cleveland Cavaliers when he was playing against the Boston Celtics, and he basically put that team on his back and led them to the NBA Finals. That LeBron James, I thought, was no longer existent. And to be quite honest with you, I still don't think that LeBron James is that type of player anymore. We can do that on a consistent basis, where you can do that over a longer period of time. But as we saw against the Miami Heat, James still is the best player in the league. Now, I'm not going to argue, I'm not going to debate Giannis winning the MVP for the season. I thought during the regular season that Giannis Antetokounmpo was the best player in the NBA. He was the guy who consistently went on the court and did what he needed to do. LeBron James might be the best player, but LeBron James is no longer in a position anymore for him to do the things in terms of what Giannis is doing. He's not required to do the things that Giannis is doing. He doesn't even have, I'm quite sure, the motivation to go ahead for 82 games or 80 games to go out and do the things that Giannis has to do both offensively and defensively. So if we're speaking about LeBron got screwed or LeBron should have won the MVP, based on the way that he played and you put him up against Giannis, I thought Giannis was the better player. The fact that James is still the second or third best player in the league at the very best when he's going strong is a testament to how great this man is. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the legacy of LeBron James. 3 championships with 3 different franchises, four championships, excuse me, with 3 different franchises. What did this do to his legacy? Is he now better than Jordan? Is he now, without question, the greatest basketball player who's ever lived? Does this move him past Magic Johnson? Does this move him past Wilt Chamberlain? Where exactly does LeBron sit now in the pantheon of great players who have played in the NBA? For myself, what this championship means for LeBron, winning his 4th, doesn't mean anything. It's almost like, when, we have milestones. We celebrate our 18th birthday. We celebrate our 21st birthday with a little bit more vigor. We celebrate our 30th, and then our 40th, and then our 50th, and then our 55th, and then our 60th. There's certain landmarks in life that you reach where, that one is just a little bit more important than the other one. You celebrate that one a little bit harder than the other one. When you turn 18, it's a lot different when you turn 18 in terms of you celebrating your birthday than, say, when you turn 20. It's a lot different when you turn 21 than when you turn 24. It's a lot different when you turn 48 than what it is when you turn 50. So for LeBron James, winning his 4th MVP award, for me, it's almost like when he won his 3rd, that was celebrating a milestone in terms of age, in terms of, wow, you're 18 and now let's go party. You're 21, now you're an adult. 50 now, basically, you hit the big 5-0. 55 now, you become a citizen, you become a senior citizen. Where is that AARP card? Where now I can start ordering off the senior menu, hip, hip, hooray. Certain time I can now get myself some Social Security. I'm now eligible for that. Certain landmarks. For LeBron James winning his 4th MVP or winning his fourth championship, it's nice, it's cool, but it doesn't move the needle anywhere closer. I don't think that LeBron James winning a championship all of a sudden now says, oh, now you're just as good as Michael Jordan, especially for those who feel that nothing that LeBron James can ever do. LeBron James could play another 10 years and not lose another basketball game and get another 10 NBA championships. And people who are still going to be there talking about Jordan went 6 for 6, so that way it negates anything that LeBron James does. It's the stupidest argument in sports. I can't stand it. I hate it. I don't like getting into it. Again, as I said before, over and over and over again, and I've been saying it ever since the first whispers has started about LeBron James possibly being as good as Michael Jordan, possibly being better than Michael Jordan. You have ardent supporters on both sides of the issue. Whether it's those who think LeBron is the greatest basketball player who's ever lived, or whether it's Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player who ever lives. I say, man, who gives a flying fuck? I mean, does it really make a difference? If you're starting a franchise and you have your choice between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, can you go wrong with either one? Who are we in our basketball acumen to sit there and talk about who's a better basketball player? Different stages of life, different stages of their career, different stages, time periods and everything. What definition do you come up with in terms of who's the greatest basketball player of all time? Or what's your definition? What's your criteria when it comes down to who I think is the better basketball player, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Your definition or your criteria on how you're going to judge who's better is a lot different than mine, than a lot different from yours, than a lot different from your buddies, than a lot different from your husband, than a lot different than your boyfriend, than a lot different from your wife, than a lot different from anybody else. A lot different from those who played in the NBA 2 years, those who played in the NBA 20 years, the greatest basketball players who've ever lived, or someone who doesn't even give a shit about basketball. Everybody's definition of who's great, who's better, what constitutes great, what constitutes who's better than who, it's all different. So how are we going to narrow this down? Which points are we going to focus on where we say, well, that's the reason why I put this player ahead of that player. This is the reason why I say that Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James, or this is the reason why, this is the criteria, this is my definition in determining who the greatest basketball player who's ever lived and putting that into the equation. This is the reason why I say that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. Which criteria, which formula, which definition do you put in there that can truncate, that can supersede anything else? Because I don't know. LeBron James goes to the NBA championship 10 times in 17 years. That's fucking amazing. That's incredible. Michael Jordan only went to the NBA championship 6 times. But then you can say, yeah, but LeBron James wins 10 times, but he's 4-6. Well, Michael Jordan was 6-0. Here's one thing. Michael Jordan, 6 championships, 6 MVP during those championships. LeBron James, 4 championships, MVP 4 times. And he could have been, if you make an argument about it, the first time that he led Cleveland, I believe it was back in 2015 or 2016, one of those two, where he went first back to Cleveland from Miami and led a team that was, playing Matthew Dellavedova major minutes because of the injury of Kevin Love, who suffered a dislocated shoulder against Kelly Olynyk in the Boston Celtics, and then Kyrie Irving, who injured himself in the closing moments of Game 1 of the NBA Finals, which caused him to miss the rest of the season. So LeBron James basically had to carry an entire squad on his team. Timothy Mozgov and other guys out there who were far below the talent level of the Golden State Warriors, actually got them to 2 wins before collapsing. You could have made the strong argument that LeBron James could have been the MVP for that NBA Finals. So who are we speaking about? What are we speaking about? Are we speaking about points? Are we speaking about, two-way basketball players? I mean, what's your definition when you speak about Michael Jordan and LeBron James, in the conversation of who's the best basketball player of all time? I just don't like getting into it. I've always said it, and I said it before. My opinion of him before the season started, whether he would have won or lost, would have remained the same. He's the most unique basketball player of all time. He's Karl Malone, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan rolled into one. He had the body and the strength of Karl Malone, only stronger. He has the size, the basketball genius of a Magic Johnson, and he had the scoring mentality or the ability to score like Michael Jordan, period. That's all it is. And I think as far as basketball players of all time, I'm speaking about basketball players. I'm not speaking about NBA only. I'm speaking about when you take into account his entire basketball career, which includes high school, college, pro, and of course, LeBron James didn't go to the college level and play basketball. And I'm not starting from Pee Wee League, and I'm not starting from grammar, because an 8-year-old LeBron James, I don't know how great he was as a basketball player. I don't know how much he dominated the Pee Wee Leagues. And I don't know what the competition was out there in Akron, Ohio, where he was playing at that young age. In fact, he could have been playing football for all we knew. But in terms of just the level of basketball that I equate when I'm talking about the greatest basketball players of all time, not greatest NBA players, I think LeBron James is the second best basketball player of all time behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. If you really think about it, and if you want to go ahead and take a look at Kareem, I mean, my goodness gracious. I mean, this was a guy, I think LeBron and Jabbar are the only 2 players in NBA history who not only met unbelievable expectations from the time they were teenagers, not only did they meet the expectations, they overshot them. They more than delivered on their promise of what basketball players could be. And you're speaking about, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor at Power Memorial in New York City. He led his team to 3 straight New York City championships, had a 71-game winning streak, had a 79-2 overall record. His team was ranked #1 in the country his junior and his senior year. And in fact, the 71-game streak was stopped by then Morgan Wooten of DeMatha High School over in Hyattsville, Maryland, which put Morgan Wooten on the map in terms of him being a good coach or a great coach, or on his path, his journey, his avenue down to being a Hall of Fame coach. Then he went over to UCLA, speaking about Alcindor, soon to be Jabbar. And at UCLA, he was twice named Player of the Year in 1967 and 1969. He was a three-time first-team All-American, 1967 to 1969. Played on 3 NCAA basketball championship teams, 1967, 68, 69, and was honored as the most outstanding player in the NCAA tournament 3 times, and became the first ever Naismith College Basketball Player of the Year in 1969. So when then Alcindor was being recruited by everybody, and when he decided to go to UCLA, they said that, man, he was going to tear things up. He was going to do this. He was going to do that. And he did all of those in spades. In fact, he was part of the game of the century, which was one of the most important games in college basketball history. When you're speaking about that time that they played the then number 2 ranked University of Houston with then Elvin Hayes in the Astrodome, and the Houston Cougars were victorious, but UCLA got the revenge 101-69 later on that season. So, I mean, you know, Jabbar was unbelievable. And then, of course, in the NBA, you're speaking about a 6-time NBA championship, 6-time league MVP, the all-time leading scorer, and the most iconic shot in NBA history if you're speaking about the Skyhook. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm sorry, Michael Jordan fans. I'm sorry. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as far as being a basketball player is concerned, is the greatest basketball player who's ever lived. Because Michael Jordan couldn't even make his team at Laney High School his sophomore year, couldn't even make the varsity team. Now he came back and then became a phenom, but that was only for a couple of years. Then he came to North Carolina under Dean Smith and was part of a very good basketball team his freshman year, but he was far from the best. James Worthy was the best player on that team for North Carolina. You could even make the point that he was part of a well-oiled machine outside of James Worthy, where you had Sam Perkins, who was a freshman, when you had Michael Jordan, who was then named Mike Jordan, when you had Jimmy Black, who was an underrated point guard, and then you had Matt Doherty. That team that got lucky enough to beat Georgetown University because Fred Brown had a brain fart, that was a great team. And Michael Jordan, who I believe averaged like 13, 14 points a game, he was far from being the dominant, impactful player that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was, or he was not the guy that was going to go to North Carolina and expected that he have the immediate tremendous impact that Abdul-Jabbar had when he went from Power Memorial to UCLA. So because of that, and even if you think about it, going into the NBA, Michael Jordan was supposed to be good. Michael Jordan was supposed to be very good. Nobody expected Michael Jordan to be as great as he was. Because coming into the draft, he didn't go left. He didn't have a decent jumper. That's the reason why Sam Bowie and Hakeem Olajuwon were drafted before him. If everybody knew Michael Jordan was going to turn into the player Michael Jordan was, if everybody knew Michael Jordan was going to become 85% of the player that Michael Jordan was, you think the Houston Rockets would have been drafting Hakeem Olajuwon? You think Sam Bowie would have been drafted by Portland ahead of Michael Jordan, even though they had Clyde Drexler and John Paxson on that team? Fuck, hell no. So the expectations for Jordan coming into the NBA were not as monstrous and out of control as when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came from UCLA to the Milwaukee Bucks. And then we're also talking about a time where with Kareem, this guy was supposed to be the greatest second coming. This guy was supposed to be the guy that was going to be better than Bill Russell, be better than Wilt Chamberlain, a guy who was going to turn the league upside down, a guy that was going to change the game. And that's exactly what Abdul-Jabbar did. The greatest basketball player who's ever lived. Second again, LeBron James. LeBron James he's been labeled as savior of basketball, and especially the NBA, since he was a junior in high school, since he was put on the cover of Sports Illustrated. LeBron James was expected to be the next one, the chosen one, the great one. And yeah, he made some mistakes during the senior year. Yeah, there was a time, you remember that time, a couple of instances he got into For his 18th birthday, he accepted a Hummer H2 as a gift from his mother, who said secured a loan from a by some I don't know, vehicle place, because they was talking about he was going to become an NBA superstar. So do me a solid now, we'll take care of you down the way. There was a time also in high school where LeBron James accepted an $845 throwback jersey. I don't know exactly what player is worth $845. I don't know if it was the jersey that Bill Russell himself wore the last game that he played in 1968 for the Boston Celtics, and then he just said, "Here you go, LeBron. This is all yours." But damn, that much for a throwback jersey? Something else. But he was suspended for a couple of games. He came back after appealing the ruling. So, I mean, there has been scrutiny. There have been eyeballs. There have been those giving thoughts and opinions on major radio and television shows about LeBron James and dissecting his every move and dissecting his every mistake and contemplating and commentating on everything that he's done since he was 16 years old. When you have Dick Vitale and Bill Walton going to his high school games when they played Oak Hill, and the main thing to do was to talk about LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James. That's the type of scrutiny. That's the type of acclaim that Michael Jordan never even dreamed of when he was a junior playing in North Carolina, playing in Wilmington, North Carolina. So, to me, I don't know. What's your definition? How's your definition? What you gonna go about your definition? To me, that means something. To me, when you overperform so much as LeBron has, man, this guy was flipping 18 years old. This guy didn't. I mean, Michael Jordan had the opportunity, had the privilege to play 3 years under Dean Smith, one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. The only player to hold Michael Jordan under 20 points was Dean Smith. You're damn right. But in doing so, made him one of the greatest, if not the greatest, arguably the greatest basketball player who's ever lived. Why? Because he taught him fundamentals. Why? Because he taught him team play. Why? Because he taught him all those type of things, which translated over to the NBA. LeBron James didn't have that situation. LeBron James came in straight out of high school, and it was his edict to go ahead and try to save the goddamn NBA. If you remember that draft of 2003, which was LeBron and Carmelo and a couple of others, man, those guys were talking about, not so much Melo and D Wade and all those other guys, but man, you're speaking about LeBron coming in saying, basically, from the folks up top, man, you've got to save this league because right now the NBA is in trouble. If you remember, there was a time in the NBA between 1997 and 98, and when James was drafted in 2003, where the NBA was in trouble. The NBA was at its lowest point since the late 1970s. I mean, it was terrible. Basically, the second time Michael Jordan retired which ended the Chicago Bulls dynasty. From that moment on, till the time LeBron James was drafted, and even after that, he still had to deal with the malice at the palace. He still had to deal with the Kobe Bryant sexual accusations. He was part of a league that was still fighting for those things, fighting over that, in terms of trying to get away and get under that filth and that mess to move ahead to where it is right now. But if you remember the 99, NBA lockout, lasted 204 days. Teams missed 464 regular season games. It lasted from July 1st, 1998 to January 20th, 1999. Forced the league to only go 50 games. Remember how much the fans were down on the NBA after that? Remember the stories about Kenny Anderson? You remember the quote by Patrick Ewing who said that, NBA players, we make a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money also. Didn't go over too well, with the general public at that time. So the All-Star game had to be canceled that season. Also during that time, you had the Kobe and Shaq feud, the bickering about winning championships and whose team it was and all of that nonsense. You had image of the players that were negative, mainly based off of racial stereotypes. The majority of those players, I remember because I did a show in Phoenix during that time, KDUS AM 1060 did news. And I just remember then when the Phoenix Suns acquired Stephon Marbury. And it was just like, oh, we got this thug, oh, we got this hoodlum, oh, we got this guy. You see this guy with his bald head and his tattoos and all this kind of stuff. So I got on the air and I said, all right, first of all, we don't know Stephon Marbury personally. All right. So, his day-to-day operations, his day-to-day living, we don't know. So to sit out there and call somebody a thug or something like that, and you're talking about being a real thug, I don't think Stephon Marbury, just because of the way that he looks, just because of the way his head is shaved, constitutes him from being a thug. I don't think Stephon Marbury is going out doing thuggish things, AKA breaking the law, AKA hurting other people, AKA being a menace to society. Now, Stephon Marbury might not be the nicest guy. Stephon Marbury at that time might not be kissing babies and shaking hands and helping old ladies across the street and being the good Negro. Stephon Marbury might not be all of those things. Stephon Marbury might be a knucklehead. Stephon Marbury might not be the greatest father. Stephon Marbury might not be the most doting of fathers. Stephon Marbury might not be the most dedicated to his woman or the most faithful to his woman. Stephon Marbury might not live the solitude life. But none of those things make Stephon Marbury a thug. None of those things make Stephon Marbury a menace to society. And I remember that time in Phoenix, I had to explain that over and over and over again. And I also had to come up with the argument, okay, if everybody, because at that time, speaking about the NBA during that time period between the end of Michael Jordan playing and the drafting of LeBron James, just to kind of paint the picture of how bad the NBA was in terms of its PR, in terms of its, image. I mean, you remember that bullshit that used to talk about, the NBA was full of thugs. The NBA was, and I used to say to people, okay, if the NBA is full of thugs, call me up right now and name me 7. Name me 7. I believe there were 28, 29 teams during that time, 26, 27 teams. There are 12 players on each team, 15 players on each team. So you're speaking about a league that has close to 400, 500 players. If all of those players, if the majority of those players are thugs, give me a call and name me 5. It shouldn't be hard. Shouldn't be hard. Nothing. Now, of course, when I was doing the show, that was in the days before social media. So there was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. The only way that you could voice your opinion was to call. I don't even think there was an email back in those days. So to call up a station and say, why is this guy talking about this? But, it was just this image that the NBA had. Allen Iverson and Stephon Marbury were the poster child for this bullshit. Majority of the players were uneducated thugs with cornrows and tattoos. They walked around in baggy pants. All they did was smoke weed all day. They always had their posse with them, which was up to no good. None of them were fundamentally sound because most of the players didn't go to college. I mean, the team that everybody talked about was the Portland Trail Blazers. Remember that? The Portland Trail Blazers, the Portland Thug Blazers, the Portland Gangster Blazers, the Portland Trail Gangsters, all of those names that were attributed to the Portland squad at that time because they had Rasheed Wallace and they had Darius Miles and they had J.R. Ryder and they had a couple of other knuckleheads. Hey, look, and I used to say once again, hey, Rasheed Wallace might be a knucklehead. Rasheed Wallace might be a guy who you are annoyed with because all he does is whine and complain to referees. And he acts like a jerk and he acts like a clown and he acts like a fool when he's on the basketball court, when he doesn't get a call that he thinks goes his way. As talented as he is, it's annoying and frustrating if you're a Portland Trailblazer fan at that time because you saw the talent of a guy who should have been a top 10 talent. But because of his attitude, because of what he did on the court, he was a great teammate and he was great off the court, but the perception which he developed because of his antics and his attitude and the way he was on the basketball court was just frustrating. But that doesn't make him a thug because he yells and is argumentative with the referees. That didn't make him a thug, but people always wanted to equate those actions that he had on the court to somehow Rasheed Wallace participating in some thuggish activity. So the NBA had to deal with that bullshit. The San Antonio Spurs, the dynasty at that time, were considered boring and bland, which again shocked the hell out of me. So wait a minute, we're downing the NBA because you're saying that, AKA the league is too black at that time. So wait a minute. So you're downing the NBA because there's too many thugs, there's too many guys doing the wrong thing, there's too many guys who up without a college education, there's too many guys out there smoking weed, there's too many guys out there wearing baggy pants, there's too many guys being unprofessional, there's too many guys not giving their reference to those who came before them. So that's one of the reasons why you hate the NBA so much. That's one of the reasons why you can't stand the NBA so much. That's the reason why you won't watch the NBA. That's the reason why you won't let your kids put up pictures of these NBA superstars in their room because of the antics, because of the attitude, because of the image that they present. And now you're going to be killing the NBA because the San Antonio Spurs with David Robinson and Avery Johnson and Danny Ferry and Tim Duncan and those guys are too bland and they're too boring. Wait a minute, what the fuck is going on here? You motherfuckers are talking out of both sides of your mouth. So why do you hate the NBA? Is it because it's too thuggish or it's because it's too goody two-shoes, Mr. Robinson, boring, bland? Which one is it? Because it can't be both. But that's what the nonsense the NBA was dealing with before LeBron James, or the years before, a few years before LeBron James came into the league. And you're asking this kid, 18 years old, from St. Vincent Mary's High School, Academy, whatever you want to call it, in Akron, Ohio, to go ahead and turn around the league? Just him? I got to deal with this? I got to deal with this ignorance? I got to deal with this stupidity? I got to deal with folks who have these type of buffoonish, clownish, racist, bigoted views? You're asking me? I'm not Grant Hill-like. I don't have white skin and it's from French Lick, Indiana, and can play a mean game of basketball. You're asking me to now change people's opinions? 18 years old, haven't been to college? That's what LeBron James was settled with. And look at where the NBA is right now. You can be upset and you can be mad and you can be get off my lawnish about the way the game is played. And I have issues the way the game is played. The three-point shooting, some of the ways that the way the games are played now. But if you're speaking about the health of the game of basketball, if you're speaking about the health of the NBA, not just in this country, but also worldwide, where the only game that's comparable or even more that's even more popular than the NBA is football, aka soccer, but European football and cricket. Those are the only two sports that I can think about on the top of my head, which has more of a popular stance globally than the NBA. That's mainly because of LeBron James. And now, 17 years later, LeBron James is still, if not the best, the 2 or 3 best players in the NBA at a time when we're speaking about individual talent. The NBA has never been better. The talent in the NBA right now is so much stronger than when Michael Jordan was playing, than when Michael Jordan was at his heights, especially because of, blame it on Michael Jordan, because he was the one, along with Magic and Bird and Barkley and Ewing and Robinson and Stockton and Malone and Mullen and Pippen and Clyde Drexler and those guys who introduced the game of basketball to the entire world when they were on the 1992 Olympic team. So yes, the growth and the strength and all the positivity that the NBA is right now internationally, Michael Jordan, you had a big hand in that, no question about it. But the guys who looked up to Jordan and Magic and Bird and decided they wanted to be those guys, they came out and became basketball players. And they, instead of playing European football or cycling or playing tennis or anything like that, they dedicated their gifts, their athletics gifts and their skills, God-given skills, to the game of basketball. And that translated over to the NBA, and they became superstars and they became great basketball players. And then the next generation came and they started playing. Because of that, the game is stronger now than it was back when Jordan was doing his thing between 1984 and 1996. It just is. So LeBron, again, still dominant, winning championships, doing what he needs to do to be great at this stage of his career. For me, that's remarkable. And for me, that plays a big role in the equation when I start speaking about who was the who was a great basketball player. And I'm not saying that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. I am refusing to say which one is better because I don't know. And I really don't care. Because any 1, 2 of those guys that I'm going to get, I know I'm going to be highly successful. One thing LeBron James has shown, if you get LeBron James on your team and you surround him with talent, you're going to win a championship, or you are going to a championship, or you better find a team that's going to win 73 games around that average to beat you, especially after 2011 when they lost to the Dallas Mavericks. You better get yourself a squad of Golden State talent: Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, still in their physical primes if you want to beat the LeBron James-led team. And LeBron James doesn't need 15 All-Stars on his team to win. If you take a look at this Laker team that he played with, and you take a look at the championship team that won with LeBron, I would have to say that this Laker team, out of the 4 championships that he won, this has to be, at least on talent, his thinnest. I know Anthony Davis is a fucking just a remarkable player. And Anthony Davis, who, when he came into the league, he was supposed to be this next generation's Tim Duncan. I mean, the jury on that high, lofty expectation is to be determined, but he hasn't reached those statures yet, which is no big deal, because I think Tim Duncan is the most versatile front court basketball player who's ever lived. So to not be able to live up to a guy who's, I believe, in the top 7, top 8 all-time greatest basketball players, I mean, that's nothing to be ashamed of. And Anthony Davis ends his career as being the 16th best basketball player of all time. And I think that Tim Duncan is the 4th or 5th or 6th greatest basketball player of all time. Did he reach the stature of Tim Duncan? No. Did he still have an outstanding career if he finished, instead of 4th or 3rd, he finishes 15th or 16th as an all-time great basketball player? Are you satisfied with that? You better damn well be. So Anthony Davis right now, who I think is, I don't know if I want to say on his way, but I think he's the best player that LeBron James has ever played with. But when you speak about that third guy in Miami, when he won the 2 championships, Dwayne Wade was awesome, especially in 2011. But he also had Chris Bosh. When he was with the Cavaliers and he won that championship, he had Kyrie and Kevin Love. When he won this championship now in LA, he had Anthony Davis. And moving forward, we don't know who else is going to be at the third star. Let's put away Kyle Kuzma, because that's not going to happen. I mean, Rajon Rondo is nice, but at the third wheel, he doesn't match up anywhere close to Kevin Love or Chris Bosh. I don't know who else are you going to have on that team moving forward. KCP is going to be testing free agency, so we don't know. So even in the NBA now, does that even matter? If you have 2 players the caliber of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and how long is LeBron James going to be able to stay at that level to where he can be that guy, to where you can still win championships with him being the alpha dog, mega star, this, that, and the other, having those responsibilities, having that place on the team. We'll see. But there's so many avenues, so many different avenues where you can go in terms of explaining who's the better basketball player. And as I mentioned before, winning championships is very important, without question, without doubt. No doubt about it. But at the last time I checked, Michael Jordan won 0 championships with Scottie Pippen. Michael Jordan won 3 championships with Dennis Rodman. He won 3 championships with Horace Grant. There were some guys on that basketball team that Jordan was playing with that was pretty damn good. And every year that Jordan was in the finals, whether it was against the Lakers, the Lakers, the Seattle Supersonics, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Phoenix Suns, and then the Utah Jazz twice, Jordan's teams was always the better team. But I know in the last championship that they played against Utah that the Jazz had the home court advantage. But I believe other than that, I think that the Bulls had the home court advantage moving forward. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. I have no idea. But all I know is that when the NBA was at its lowest in the 1970s, David Stern, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird saved that league. Bird and Magic came into the league together in 1979. When Jordan came into the league, Magic and Bird were the main stars, rebuilding the league back up. You already had the 1983-84 championship between the Lakers and the Celtics. I mean, you couldn't think of a better casting deal than Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. One black guy, one white guy, one hardworking blue collar guy, another one Showtime Lakers, another one whose personality was outside the realm of possibilities. Another one was a guy who didn't want to have anything to deal with that bullshit. The other one, you had to risk it. You had to threaten his life for him to give you half a smile. The other guy couldn't stop smiling. I mean, it's just one team. One guy went to the Boston Celtics, a quote unquote blue collar type of city, hardworking type of city, insular type of city, but yet educated type of city, but yet racially had problems type of city. The other one went to the LA Lakers and Los Angeles, one coast to the other. I mean, it was pure heaven. And then you had, that team, that squad with Magic and Kareem and Norm Nixon, then traded for Byron Scott, and then, Kurt Rambis and all those guys, the slick back, cool Armani suit wearing coach, and Pat Riley. On the other side of the coast, you had, Kevin McHale, you had Danny Ainge, you had the white folks' favorite team out there in terms of the Boston Celtics. I guess you could say the last great white basketball team was the 1985-86 Boston Celtics with Larry Bird and Jerry Seasting and Kevin McHale and Danny Ainge and Bill Walton, those guys. I mean, maybe 5 or 6 other white guys on the basketball team that's won a championship unless they're all sitting the bench. So, I mean, that was if you like white men playing basketball, that was your last hurrah with that team. No wonder y'all like the Celtics so much. But, of course, they were legit. But, basically what I'm saying is that it was just tailor-made, those guys and those teams, and during that time for the NBA to explode. And under the stewardship and leadership of David Stern, the NBA was going to explode. So when Michael Jordan came into the league, he wasn't being asked to say, nobody, everybody was excited about Jordan coming into the league. He had just come off, a spectacular Olympic run in the 1984 Olympics with Patrick Ewing on that team. But, Jordan was going to come in and this was going to be exciting and this, that, and the other. But he wasn't, in the position to say, he wasn't in the position for the league to say, please save us because we need it. He was more of a specialty attraction than savior when he first came into the league. So I don't know, man. I don't know what you can say about this. LeBron, 4 and 6, 10 championships, and been to the finals 10 years and 17 years playing. I mean, Russell was 11 and 1. He went to 12 championships in 13 years. Speaking about Bill Russell, Kareem went to 10 NBA finals in 20 years where he won 6 and 4. Magic Johnson went to 9 finals in 12 years where he was 5 and 4. Jerry West went to 9 NBA finals in 14 years where he was 1 and 8. Tim Duncan went to 7 NBA finals in 19 years where he was 6 and 1. Kobe went to 7 NBA finals in 20 years where he was 5 and 2. I don't know, man. Jordan again, 6 and 6. So I don't know, man. 6 championships in 15 years. I don't know how you just parse all of these things together and talk about this guy was better than that guy. I have no idea. How much do you value quantity over quality, I guess? How much stock do you put into the amount of times that someone gets to the NBA finals as opposed to winning it? All I know is when we're speaking about invitations for the greatest player to go into the VIP section of the all-time great basketball club, you got George Mikan, you got Elgin Baylor, you got Bob Pettit, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Kareem, Bird, Magic, Shaq, Kobe, Tim Duncan, LeBron, Jordan. And if you want to then just say, break it down a little bit more, the greatest of the greats, in my opinion, it's George Mikan, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. In no particular order. I'm not saying one to last or whatever. I'm just saying in terms of the greatest of the greats. The NBA wouldn't even be the NBA. The NBA wouldn't even be in existence if it wasn't for George Mikan, who at the time was considered the Babe Ruth of basketball. So whenever you speak about the greatest basketball players of all time, in my opinion, in my definition, you have to put in George Mikan, because without him, there would be no Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, Magic, Bird, Oscar, Jerry, Tim, Larry, Magic, MJ, LeBron. Wouldn't be any of those guys. So I just think based on that, we need to pay homage to Mr. Mikan by putting him in any type of pantheon of great players who's ever played in the NBA. So Mikan, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson, Tim Duncan, Larry, LeBron, and then, I don't know, man. How could you leave out Shaq? How could you leave out Kobe? How could you leave out Jerry? How could you leave out Dwayne Wade? I mean, how could you leave out Dirk? I don't know, man. How could you leave out Kevin Durant? I don't know. I don't know. There's about 30 players that you can name where, as far as being the 10 best basketball players of all time, how am I going to argue? How am I going to argue that if someone says that Kevin Durant was better than Larry Bird? How am I going to argue that, man? How am I going to argue if they say that Dwayne Wade was better than, I don't know, that Dwayne Wade is second or third best shooting guard who's ever played the game behind Magic and Kobe? I mean, how are you going to, I don't know. I have no idea. So, look, the argument against LeBron has always been, great player, but he needs to be on a great team to win, which is bullshit, because you know what? When he couldn't get it done, yeah, okay, he went from Cleveland to Miami, hooked up with D. Wade and Bosh. When they were no longer championship material after they got blown out by San Antonio, he then left to join Kyrie and Kevin Love and went back and won a championship in Cleveland. When that run was over, then he went ahead and he went to Los Angeles, acquired Anthony Davis, and you saw the results of that. But I will say this, again, what all-time great NBA basketball player wasn't hooked up with somebody? Bill Russell played with multiple Hall of Famers throughout his career and had one of the best coaches in NBA history in Red Auerbach. Yeah, you could make the argument the reason why those guys won all those championships because of Bill Russell, but guess what? The last time I checked, the only player that LeBron James played with and won a championship before he got there was Dwayne Wade, and he won that mainly because he was playing with such great players as Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, Gary Payton, Jason Williams, and they had their coach on the bench named Pat Riley. So when LeBron came to those teams, he automatically became the best player on that team. And then going back to Cleveland. I mean, Kevin Love is nice, but Kevin Love is not the third banana that Michael Jordan played with when he was with Dennis Rodman. Or Tim Duncan, when he was playing with Manu Ginobili at that time as a third wheel. That player, Ginobili, was better than when LeBron was playing with Kevin Love at the third wheel. No disrespect to Kevin Love. So, LeBron in the finals, should he have beaten Dallas in 2011? Did he melt down? Did he have a mental, brain fart? Did he freeze? Did he choke? Did he do all those things? Guilty as charged, in my opinion. But after that, hey, man, the guy didn't lose. And if we're going to throw all that nonsense on him, if you're going to, use that as the anchor to weigh him down in terms of when you're speaking about why he can't reach Jordan's type of rarefied air, why aren't you doing that with Magic Johnson in 1984 in the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics? Because if I remember in Game 2, he was the one with the game tied that wouldn't throw the ball to Kareem once he was open. If it was my recollection, in Game 4, he was the guy that when the game was tied in overtime at the Forum where he missed 2 free throws. If it's my recollection, it was Game 7 where Magic Johnson threw the ball away a couple of times near the end that caused Boston to win the basketball game. ML Carr giving him the moniker Tragic Johnson. So if you're going to hold LeBron James for the miscues and for the shortcomings that he had in 2011, are you going to do the same thing if you're old enough to apply those types of measures to Magic Johnson and say that, well, I think Larry Bird was better, or I think, Magic can't be this high because what he did in the 1984 NBA Finals, even though he came back, rectified that more than ever, and won 5 NBA championships? If you're going to give that to Magic, why aren't you going to give that to LeBron? Because after he came back in that disaster that he had in the 2011 Finals, why can't you give him his props and say, well, let me see, 1 bad series, 4 awesome series? No, fuck that. 1 bad series, about 7 or 8 awesome series? Yeah, I think that one was an aberration. I think the Dallas Finals was an aberration. First time, or, so I don't know. should have beaten Dallas in 2011, should have lost to the San Antonio Spurs in 2013. Thank you very much, Ray Allen. But look, man, it's 2007, 2014 Spurs were better. 2015, 2017, 2018 Golden State Warriors, they were better. With the exception of Dallas, I mean, there's no shame in losing to those teams. Did you really think that you're going to hold it against them that they lost, and LeBron lost in the finals in 2007? That's the reason why Jordan was better? You're going to do that? You're going to go out like that? All right. All right. All right. Wendell's World in Sports. This is just the video podcast of what I do, just giving you a little taste of what my show is all about, my podcast is all about, Wendell's World in Sports, which you can find on Spotify, which you can find on iTunes, which you can find on iHeart, which you can find anywhere where you listen to podcasts are, I do my thing, talk about what's going down in the world of sports, put in a little music, put in a little, these kids outside my room here, these kids outside my house doing their thing. Shouldn't they be in school? And they should be in school, right? Okay. Well, when I say those kids should be at home distant learning, that's what I meant to say. No one's at school right now, but these kids should be at home distant learning. But hell, fuck it, I hate their parents. But basically this is what I do in terms of, giving you my thoughts and opinions about what's happening in the world of sports. For my podcast, I'm mainly speaking about week 5 of the NFL. Briefly touched on, the NBA finals, but I dedicated almost all of it to the NBA. So I'm just saving the video podcast, the YouTube channel podcast of what's going down for my talk about what's happening in the NBA finals with the season finally being over. Man, I'm so glad it's over. That was a long, long series. And not a long series, it's just been a long year. And man, even when there's no interruptions, but the NBA season's over, I'm exhausted. Same thing with the NFL. When the Super Bowl is over, man, it's like, please, I don't want to think about football for at least 6 to 8 weeks. Because my main thing every Sunday, every Monday, every Thursday is football, NFL. And I put so much into it. It's like, I just want to do something else on the weekends. I want to do something else on Sunday rather than watch football. I just do. By the time like mid-January rolls around, it's like I'm just so sick and tired of spending the last 4.5 months on Sundays watching football that I want to do something else. Labor of love, don't get me wrong, but near the end, it's just like, ooh, man, I need a break. I need to do something else. My social life ain't nothing. It's pretty pathetic, but man, give me something else to do. So Wendell's World in Sports, that's the podcast that you can listen to, but right now I'm doing the video of Wendell's World in Sports here on my YouTube channel. Subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment, do whatever, just have fun, enjoy yourself for me. Hey, I want to end with something, and might be a little sensitive, but for me, it's always interesting when people say this or when players say this or whatever. The Lakers won themselves the championship, and the question now or the discussion now is working the narrative of winning the championship less than a year after the death of Kobe Bryant and his beautiful, wonderful 11-year-old daughter, Gigi, in a helicopter crash in late January. How do you deal with it? I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't want to say how do you deal with it, but I mean, how do you put that in perspective? How do you put that in context? Because it's like, I just hate it when it was like, hey, man, let's go out there and win this one for Kobe. Let's go out there and win this. We're going to dedicate this. It's nice. It's a nice gesture and everything, but it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, what exactly does that do? I mean, I'm quite sure Vanessa's like, hey, congratulations, wonderful, but she's still going through a hard time. Exactly what is bringing a championship to Los Angeles? What exactly is winning a championship going to do for the pain and the suffering that the Bryant family is going through right now, or the Laker organization is going through right now? I don't know. And it's just not Kobe. I mean, we see that all the time. I remember, and I said this on the podcast, the latest podcast that I did. that when Jerome Brown, the defensive tackle for the Philadelphia 76ers, for the Philadelphia Eagles, thank you, that team had Buddy Ryan as its coach and Reggie White and Seth Joyner, and it was a stacked, loaded Super Bowl winning type of defense. And in the offseason, Jerome Brown died in a car accident, and Mike Golick, who did Mike and Mike for decades, played for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it was like at that time, the team got together and they left the stall where Jerome Brown, the Eagles organization, the Eagles training camp and everything. They left that. They let that be. And we were going to dedicate the season to Jerome and his family and this, that, and the other. And it's a nice gesture, but I don't know. I don't say you just forget them and you move on, of course. But where do you find that balance into? And look, what my opinions and thoughts are, just like the rest of you guys, when it pertains to how the Lakers did this and how they feel about this and the individual players and those in the organization. Who gives a fuck what we think, concerning that matter? But for me, it's almost like, because I'm just cynical by nature, it's like, okay, how much are you actually sincerely, dedicating with a hurtful heart and all of these things? How much is that, and how much of this is just trying to get a few more clicks, or trying to get a few more followers, or trying to get the sympathy thing, or trying to do some personal gain from this? I don't know, and I'm not accusing the Lakers of this. I'm not accusing them at all. But it's just for me, it's not about, hey, I want to go ahead and I want to do this for this, that, and the other. My man Cliff Glover, who I grew up with, died. My man Hayden Willard, who I grew up with, died. My man Stuart Levy, who I grew up with, died. Am I going to be dedicating anything to them? No, not really. No, I mean, anything that I'm going to be doing, is going to bring their families and loved ones joy and happiness. I mean, no, not for the most part. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Vanessa Bryant wrote, accompanied by a photo of Kobe and general manager Rob Pelinka. Those two were very close. In an Instagram story after the Lakers won the title, she said, "Go Lakers! Congratulations, Uncle P! Congratulations, that Laker. Kobe was right. All right, stay the course. Block out the noise. Wish Kobe and Gigi were here to see this." Oh man, don't say so. Oh, good. Wish Kobe and Gigi were here to see this. Yeah, man. Jeez, no fucking kidding on that one, right? What Pelinka said after the series was over, I think Kobe and Gianna could have. I think Kobe and Gianna have guided this team the entire year. Kobe's voice is in my head always, every day, every minute. And I think to be able to, for LeBron and AD and Vogel and myself and Jeannie, for us to be able to win this championship doesn't take away the sting of the loss, but it helps us add to their legacy. Their legacy will last forever. It will impact lives around the world in positive ways. I don't know. And then James wrote on his Instagram on Wednesday night, "I hope I made you proud, my brother. Missed you, love and missed you, champ." I don't know, man. I don't know. Was Kobe out there? I mean, Kobe was not the reason why the Lakers won a championship. It was because of LeBron. It was because of Frank Vogel's astute planning, game plans, and I think it was because of Jason Kidd. I think it was because of Rajon Rondo. I think it was because of Dwight Howard. I think it was because of AD and LeBron. I think it was because of Alex Caruso. I think it was because of KCP. I think it was because of those guys. Kobe's voice is in my head always, every day, every minute. Well, that's great, Rob, but you're not out there playing. I mean, you weren't out there in the second quarter when the Lakers put the game away. You weren't out there during those times. And again, I don't mean to be cynical, and I'm not insinuating that Pelinka is being bullshitting on that. I'm quite sure that he does believe all that stuff sincerely. But for me, it's like, look, Kobe. I don't know, man. If Kobe Bryant, if we know anything about Kobe Bryant right now has better things to do, has more important things to do up in heaven than to worry about the Lakers winning basketball games and winning championships. I'm quite sure that he's proud. He's like, "Hey, way to go, guys. Good, nice job. Way to go. Awesome." But, number one, I think the spirit of Kobe Bryant is taking care of Vanessa and the kids and making sure that they're okay and helping them get through this. The spirit of Kobe Bryant is up there with the spirit of Gigi right now and taking care of that. And let's not forget, man, Kobe's in heaven. So Kobe, if we know anything right now, Kobe is up there right now playing in the HBA, the Heavenly Basketball Association. Kobe right now is going up against Wilt Chamberlain. Kobe right now is going up against Reggie Lewis and Len Bias, and he's going up against Maurice Stokes. And, right now he's consulting with, John Thompson of Georgetown about, what we're going to do against Red Holtzman's team of those guys out there. So, I mean, right now, Kobe and Wilt Chamberlain are having a discussion about who are the greatest basketball players. And right now, the spirit of Wilt is going up against the spirit of LeBron, and those guys are going at it. And, after that, the winner's going to take on the spirit of Len Bias. And it's just, Hank Gathers is up there, getting the job done. So, I mean, Kobe is already playing in another league, and he's going to be able to shine. He's going to be able to fly. He's going to be able to do his thing for eternity. And I'm quite sure the only thing Kobe is doing right now, that he's like, look, right now he's probably finagling and trying to move the chips and the blocks and rearrange a way that when in the next 50 years, when LeBron finally comes through those heavenly gates, Kobe's going to want him. No, you know what? I don't even think Kobe wants the spirit of LeBron James to be on his team. It's going to be like, welcome home. Here's the ball. Let's go. Let's get right at it. It's going to be one-on-one. Same thing with the spirit of Jordan. I'm quite sure when those guys finally come home to their heavenly father, I'm quite sure as soon as they get past the gates and they walk on the court and someone says, anybody wants a game? The spirit of Kobe Bryant's going to be like, I got you. Come on, Mike, let's go. Now we're really going to find out who the best player is. And at that time, guys like Bill Russell and Elgin Baylor and Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain and all those guys are going to be sitting there laughing. And let me tell you something, Kobe's going to turn to those guys. MJ's going to turn to those guys. LeBron's going to turn to those guys. D-Wade's going to turn to those guys and say, you know what, old man? I got y'all next. And the spirit of them brothers. I'm going to be sitting there going, really? Let's go. Let's do this. So right now, man, Kobe is playing in the greatest basketball association that could ever be. So I think Kobe's happy, but Kobe's worrying about winning that heavenly basketball championship. That's the only thing he hasn't won. I think he won in high school. He didn't go to college, but we know the competitor Kobe is. So right now he is focused mainly on winning that heavenly basketball association championship. All right, I am done. I am out of here. I want to thank you so much for listening. Again, Wendell's World in Sports is the podcast that you can listen to. I do these as much as possible. The next time I do one of these video podcasts, I'll actually have my haircut. Yeah! So I'm looking forward to that. So Wendell's World in Sports is an association with the wonderful, the beautiful, the talented, the lovely, the educated, the wonderful Sydney Davis, my favorite human being under the age of 51. Special dedication always goes out to her. So I thank you very much for listening. Wendell's World in Sports YouTube channel, the video. Everybody, y'all have a good one.